Hey guys, so usually the stuff I do on here is some kind of analysis, some kind of way of breaking a song down in hopes of being able to learn from it, right? But since my band is in the middle of writing our own album, I wanted to start sharing some ideas that I come across during that composition process. More about creativity, how I like to find inspiration, that sort of thing. Today I want to talk about alternate guitar tunings and how I was finally converted to using them. More broadly, though, I'm going to talk about how we're really at our most creative when we don't totally understand what's going on, and how changing your tuning is really just one of many ways to put yourself in that situation. Previously, I basically just found alt tunings to be annoying. When I heard a song that I liked and found out that it used an alt tuning, I'd feel totally lost in terms of figuring out the song by ear. And if I found a tab, I'd basically just have to trust whoever made that tab that they guessed the tuning of the song correctly. Short of finding an interview with the band in which they discuss tunings, which I have been able to do a couple times, I still have to either guess what the tuning is myself or try out somebody else's guess. I also found it annoying that working on an alt tuning song inherently involved a switch from standard tuning, and that if I got bored of it, I'd have to switch back before I could play any other songs. There was also a bit of apprehension with trying out some alt tunings because they would actually involve uptuning some of my strings by a whole step, and I was worried I'd snap a string, mess up my guitar's setup with the extra tension, or just generally reduce the lifetime of my strings. Gradually though, seeing what people in various online communities said on the subject, I realized that my thinking about alternate tunings was completely wrong. First off, about my concerns about snapping a string, I found that generally, guitar strings are fine being tuned up a whole step, and some people even push them up 3 half steps without snapping them, though generally you don't want to go any further than that. I quite liked one explanation that I found that said, what tires your strings out more is actually all the switches between tunings. You can think of it like bending a paperclip. Bending it once and leaving it in that new position won't really do anything, but bending it back and forth hundreds of times will start to wear the metal down and ultimately break the paperclip. This is why if you have multiple guitars and are experimenting with an alt tuning, it can be good to have one guitar just live in that tuning. Or you can just have a guitar that you mess around with all sorts of different tunings on all the time, and you can put a new set of strings on that guitar when it's time to record. Either way, long story short, this concern isn't really a big deal. So what I do, I have my travel guitar here that it's kind of cool. You can fold the neck in. But I have this as my guitar that I just throw into all sorts of different tunings, and I don't really care about whether I snap a string on this one or anything. The other thing that's nice about having a designated alt tuning guitar is that it allows you to easily switch between standard tuning, using your normal guitar, and that alt tuning. It eliminates that step of you having to change back and forth. For me, this makes working on alt tuning songs much easier. More importantly though, the big thing that I learned is that the idea of trying to guess a song's tuning perfectly on the first try is kind of missing the whole point. When you're learning a song that sounds like it's using an alt tuning, the attitude should be more like, what changes do I need to make in order to execute this song? Because the same riff is often executable with multiple different tunings. Even potentially in standard tuning, it might just involve a weird hand position or something like that. The point is that alt tunings offer another unique dimension of exploration on the instrument, right? I remember talking with Nate from Floral a few years ago and him pointing out that the guitar is an inherently 6-voiced instrument, with each of the open strings being one of those voices. I agree really strongly on this one. Guitar, like many other instruments really, is different from, say, the piano, in that there are many different ways to play the same note, each with a unique timbre. For example, I can play a B3 either using a high fretting on a low string, a low fretting on a high string, or an open string, and all of these sound a bit different. Alternate tunings essentially explore choosing different notes as having that unique open string timbre. There's also this general shift in your tone with having that rattling loose string sound. Versus that exaggeratedly bright tight string sound. Nate's tuning for Floral is pretty crazy. It's B, F sharp, B, F sharp, B, F sharp. Meaning that some of the lower strings are really down-tuned versus standard, and then the G and the high E strings are actually up-tuned. His is an interesting example because it's such an exotic tuning that non-standard string gauges are required. So you actually have to buy custom gauges of strings. Basically, you can achieve a low note either through a looser string or a fatter string. And the reverse is also true. Nate sort of mixes these two, and although he does have fatter low strings versus standard and skinnier high strings versus standard, the gauge adjustment is not enough to achieve that low pitch. There's an extent to which that lowness of pitch is achieved through looseness of the strings. And on the floor recordings, the guitar still has this nice string rattling looseness in the low range, which gives it a nice sense of grit and teenage garage band allure, if you will. The coolest thing about alt tunings, though, is that they make all the shapes that you learned using standard tuning no longer valid. This makes you return to being a beginner, to being someone who has to curiously and gradually explore on the instrument in order to write anything. I truly think that it's a shortcut to getting some unique sounds out of the instrument, because certain chords that would otherwise be impossible, or at least very challenging, in standard tuning are now readily available. Of course, the reverse is also true, but who cares? There are lots of potential ways to get yourself out of your compositional comfort zone. Write a rhythm that's so syncopated that you lose where the one is, and then play around with the feeling of where that one might be. Give yourself 10 minutes to write a song that expresses exactly how you feel right now. Learn how to play a figure that you wrote on one instrument on a different instrument. Or, of course, try a different tuning. A tuning that we got excited about in my band was D-A-E, A-B-E. i.e. from standard, down tuning the low E down a whole step, and up tuning the D and G strings up a whole step, resulting in a kind of open D sus chord sort of shape. It's a really fun tuning that you can do these cool major run things. My bandmate had kind of stumbled onto the tuning while playing around, and I actually found it while learning some songs by Uchu Kombini and Town Portal. Although Town Portal uses a variant that's a whole step down from that, so C, G, D, G, A, D. What I'm talking about here, though, is really just the tip of the iceberg. Just like guitarists from Floral, This Town Needs Guns, Covet, and even bands from the prog metal world like The Contortionist, you can really go down the rabbit hole on this one and even seek out some non-standard gauges in order to achieve your mad scientist tuning, if that's really of interest to you. Unlike bands like The Great Chon, hallowed be their name, Chon bro, yeah, who generally stick to standard tuning and find that harmonic creativity through bending their hands into ever weirder shapes, artists who make use of alt tunings find that same creativity by tweaking their instruments and forcing themselves into a sense of beginner's mind. This, my friends, is what finally sold me on alt tunings. Derp, this is the part that I act like a real YouTuber and I'm like and subscribe, yeah. No, but thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate people watching these, giving me ideas for new ones. Look out for the next one.